And go ahead, Ralph. Just a sec, I can't hear you. Let me make sure you are not unmuted yet. Let's go ahead.
Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Hey,
Perfect.
Happy New Year.
Hey, how you doing? Happy New Year and all that. At the end of the class the Q&A session last week, you were talking about using spikenard and vetiver for frozen or muscles and frozen fascia.
Okay. So not so much for frozen fascia, but for the spikenard a little bit more than vetiver, but vetiver would still work. That's more for muscle imbalances.
Okay.
If you have fascia that's really wound up, like really tight, if there's scarring, helichrysum would be your first kind of go-to thing.
Okay.
Like a lot of times what people are calling scar tissue is basically like a spasm, or in the old days we used to call them lesions, but it's basically like a knot, but in the soft tissue rather than in the muscle. Like it's in the tissue around the muscle, right? And so helichrysum is very good to release that. And I like to start with helichrysum and then follow it with one of the peppers, like pink pepper, white pepper, black pepper. We've been using therapeutically for releasing some fascia on back issues by treating the hamstrings with different types of pepper, and it really loosens up the tissue so that when you go in and you do the work on the muscle itself, it almost like has a space to relax. Like the fascia kind of wraps around the muscle. And
I know tight, about fascia.
Yeah, okay. And so the pepper is really antispasmodic. It's hydrating. Anytime you want to release soft tissue, you want to hydrate it, which is, getting blood to the area. Right. And so the different peppers work really good for like what you would call like a frozen shoulder or a stiff shoulder. You could use marjoram just because of its antispasmodic properties, but the peppers take it a step further because they're also a bit more of a circulatory stimulant, where the marjoram is good for calming down the nervous system. And if you look at like how muscle relaxers work, there's some muscle relaxers that actually help the muscle to relax by basically making the blood get into the muscle to a much higher, greater degree. And then there's another type of muscle relaxer that actually calms and relaxes the nerves that like feed into that muscle. And so depending on what you're shooting for, sometimes you go after it through the neurological route, sometimes you go through it through the circulatory route. For me, I kind of rotate the approach. Like marjoram is very good for the neurological, it's antispasmodic, but it calms the nerves. It takes you out of fight flight. You could throw tarragon in there, anise or anise. You could say basil does that a little bit, but it doesn't quite have the circulatory properties that the different peppers have. And so pepper and helichrysum really don't work well when mixed together, but if you like layer them, do the helichrysum and then shortly later follow it with a pepper, it is a very strong 1-2 punch, very, very strong 1-2 punch. And so,
So I've had a frozen shoulder that never fully came back. The other side, I've had a couple of shoulder injuries. Overdoing it as an elderly person who ought to know better, kind of thing.
Well, so with a frozen shoulder, you have like an extra added component. Like, so you can have what you would call like adhesions, which are like where the fascia is really kind of like locked up, like I think where you were going with your description. And there can actually even be a little bit of like calcium deposits on the front side of the shoulder blade, which is between your ribs and the shoulder blade. So there's a really narrow space that can actually have these little
Calcium
pointy
buildup.
parts. Yeah. And so I'd still use the two that we talked about, the helichrysum and the different peppers.
Okay,
But I would also add something that is good, not at the same time. Like I would do a very rotational approach, but add things that are good for reducing deposits in the area. And so things that do that are Eucalyptus citrodora, which is eucalyptus, but it smells real lemony. And then ironbark eucalyptus, same thing, smells really super lemony. Not like eucalyptus, but it is a eucalyptus. Both
how
are.
do you spell Eucalyptus epidora? Or
What's that?
Eucalyptus epidora, I think you said?
No, citrodora, like Citriodora.
Okay,
Yeah, and then the other one to keep in that realm, which works really well, is lovage. The
Okay.
lovage oil, and it could be leaf or root. Root's a little bit more potent, but significantly more expensive. The leaf, I mean, the leaf is pretty good unless you're really treating serious kidney issues. I usually just use the leaf.
okay,
It's like 80 or 90% effective at, I can't remember, but probably half the price. And so, I always like to balance being cost effective when going through and treating this. I think the tendency is when, especially for physical ailments, you have the tendency to use it more if it's not super costly. And so you can do bigger dosages or more often. Or if it's really pricey, the tendency is, I include myself in this, is to treat it, but I don't treat it as much, or I don't use as much when I'm applying it. So treating physical ailments, I like the good go-to, just bread and butter kind of oils that produce a good result, but aren't very expensive.
okay. In carrier oils, is there any problem using?
No, it would be good in a carrier oil. The thing with carrier oils is it will make it stay in the area longer. If you just put it on neat, it will hit the system, but then it will also start to hit the bloodstream and start to get carried off into other areas. When you mix it with a carrier, the fatty oil and the essential oil, which is a volatile oil, mix, and the fatty oil doesn't penetrate the skin the same way. So what happens over a period of time is they start to separate, and you get this like slow release deposit of oils into a particular area over a period of time. So anytime you use like a vegetable oil, it's like a time release capsule that you would take. It would work over a few hours versus over 15 minutes or 5-10 minutes. And so whenever you want to hold something in a particular area, you use some sort of massage oil base. For something like that, tamano can be good, but just your good old fashioned like sesame oil can be really, really super good. They do have some the sesame oil is a lymphatic stimulant, and the tamanu is anti-inflammatory. Also, there is any carrier oil will work, but if you're trying to get more therapeutic, you can go into that realm a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I can get sesame oil down at the store here.
Yeah,
so
sesame oil is really super easy to access.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hamstrings. I've had problems with my hamstrings for years.
Okay.
So in applying this combination of my hamstrings, that should loosen things up a little.
Yeah, in fact, honestly, with the hamstrings, you could probably ditch the helichrysum and just go right to the pepper.
Okay.
Usually the tendency is more of the tension is down in the lower part of the back of your leg versus middle or up high. Doesn't mean that middle and up high don't have an issue, but the lower tends to be a bit denser. And so, that bottom third of the back of your leg, the upper leg, I would hit, pretty hard with that. So you could put it on neat. You could put it on in like an alcohol base, or you could use also witch hazel. I would use probably alcohol base or witch hazel base, just because it's a little bit more penetrating and you're trying to get in deeper, especially the bottom part of that short head and long head of the bicep femoris. You know, you got to get in there kind of deep. And sometimes with a massage oil, it gets in, but it doesn't get in deep enough.
Okay.
And so either neat or in some sort of solvent like alcohol or witch hazel.
Okay. All right.
But do it daily, even like twice a day.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you loosen up the hamstrings, a lot of times it will make your low back feel better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would that pepper and alcohol combination also work for the neck area?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can use it anywhere. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, like one area that I hit almost every day with that pepper combination is the spot where the neck and shoulder kind of come together.
That's one of the places where I've got
Yeah.
the thing.
I mean, that spot is one of the most easily irritated spots in the body. You know, it's just everybody's got tension there. So in the past, I put like spikenard there, vetiver, you know, marjoram, and they all work. They all work kind of good. But the pink pepper, I mean, like I would put those other things on, and like the tenderness would go from like maybe an 8 or a 9 down to like a 4 or a 5 or maybe even a 3. But the pink pepper, it goes down to a 0. I mean, there's just no tenderness there at all.
I have to put an order in tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, good. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Good luck with that. Keep us posted.
Okay.
And go ahead, Marianne, then Tracy.
Hey, Miss Mary.
I'm wondering if parsley oil contains oxalic acid.
I'll have to look that up.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. Let me look. Based on the information I have, no.
Okay.
What kind of acid was it?
Oxalic.
No, it doesn't look like it. No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Were you having a reaction?
I'm
or-
anemic, and I was reading, and I'm not sure how reliable the resource was, but it said don't eat parsley because of the oxalic acid, because it interferes with how the blood absorbs.
So the
iron.
thing is like sometimes the herb, this happens with a lot of plants, the herb and the oil don't always have the same chemistry. Like, you know,
Okay.
because the oils are just the volatile part of the plant, you know, the part that produces the scent and things. And so it doesn't always have all the other aspects. One of the oils that you wouldn't want to use for an extended period of time would be yarrow. That does affect the absorption of iron when used probably more than 3 or 4 weeks in a row. You know, you could use it for like a week or 2 and then take a break. Even if you're not using it daily, you could go on for a period of time. But if you're using it daily internally, it will start to eventually affect the absorption of iron. But off the top of my head, I can't think of anything else that. There's probably a couple other things, but I'd have to look them up to see what it is. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. That's helpful.
So, but like if you're applying it to the skin or using soap or anything like that, it should have no impact.
So that doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Happy New Year.
Hey, I heard you guys got some snow.
We did get some snow.
Ooh.
It was 80 degrees on Sunday morning, and Sunday night about 2 o'clock it was about 30, and we had about 3 or 4 inches of snow. So,
Wow.
yeah, and which is probably one of the reasons why this body doesn't feel very good.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah, just I've got a lot of fatigue, and I went to a friend of mine who's an energy worker, and she said my pituitary, hypothalamus, and pineal glands were kind of out of whack, and I'm just wondering if I can use the vital centers oils for those, and if so, how would I do
I would
that?
actually probably use either a lemon verbena, or you could use black spruce or Sylvester pine.
Okay, so will somebody put that in the chat for me?
Mhm.
Of course, I don't have a pen and a piece of paper.
The blend Quiet Mind would also work.
Quiet mind. Okay. Is that, I think you've had two blends called Quiet Mind, or just one?
The newer one, like the old one was a cream. It wasn't really an oil. But,
Right. Okay. Okay. And just inhalation?
no, you need to take them in turn.
Oh, okay. So Sylvester Pine, the other one was
Black spruce
black spruce and
or lemon verbena. Lemon verbena is a great regulator of the entire endocrine system. The Sylvester pine and the black spruce will have an impact on like the pituitary and hypothalamus and some of the other glands. Not all of them, but a significant amount. So sometimes when you combine them, they kind of overlap and do the whole system. But lemon verbena by itself will also do it.
okay. Okay. And just like once a day, or
You could do twice a day.
twice
I mean, you could do more, but you probably don't need to. Like twice a day should, start to balance it out, unless there's some substantial endocrine issue. You're just trying to balance it out because of weather or fatigue, things like that. The other thing that you always want to do when you're working with the endocrine system is always complement the endocrine work with working the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system sometimes carries the hormones, and so sometimes it's not the hormones, or excuse me, it's not the glands themselves that aren't producing. It's that the lymphatic system is doing a poor job of delivery. It's like the post office at Christmas. Too much is going on. Things start slowing down a little bit, and they just don't reach the target sites. And so I always kind of do both.
okay. Thank you. That sounds
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. One of the ways to quickly jumpstart the movement of lymph is treating the skin, by the way. Like with coffee or parsley.
So one of the things I did,
hyssop. Mhm.
one of the things I did was I did some skin brushing and then got in
Yeah.
a bath of parsley, and boy, I could tell my lymphatic system was jump started because I
Yeah. That's
just like,
perfect.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I could do that with coffee as well. And
Coffee is a
Oh,
great
lymphatic.
stimulant for the skin. Yeah, great stimulant for the skin.
thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Miriam.
Hey, Miriam.
Howdy, Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year to you. How's that Northeast treating you?
We have no snow.
Oh, really? Oh, check you
Yeah,
out. You're living in a bubble.
I know it. I know it. We had about 12 degrees last night, so it's cold enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a question for you along the same lines of the fascia. I think I've got plantar fasciitis. The bottom of my foot is like really, really sore.
Yeah, that's, I mean, without going into more detail, the foot is super prone to inflammation in the fascia, and that you just have burning sensation. The other thing to look for is your foot gets longer you know, like it doesn't fit in the shoe quite like it did, or you start to have one foot a little bit bigger than the other, the fascia is inflamed and the arch is starting to fall a little bit. And so there's kind of a layered approach to that. A little bit different than what we were talking about with like the pink pepper, or the different kinds of pepper for the fascial lesion. Here, you're needing to reduce the inflammation. Normal anti-inflammatories don't quite always hit the fascia. You know, sometimes they hit muscles, sometimes they hit the nerve endings, but the one thing that works really well for inflammation in the fascia is lemongrass. And I would say put like 20 drops or so of lemongrass in some alcohol or witch hazel. You could also use vinegar as well, but people usually use like alcohol. Witch hazel can be a little bit gentler on the skin. And then from the toes all the way up to your knee, you just lather the liniment on, you know, liniment or body tonic, however you want to call it, and let that dry, right? Then use, a lot of times I use vetiver, a little tiny bit of vetiver in between the toes, like this, you know. And the thing is with the vetiver is it stimulates circulation, but it does it in a way that's like cooling and not hot. And so it has a little bit of a muscle relaxer property to it, but it's a good way to stimulate circulation without causing inflammation. You know, because the area is already a little bit inflamed. You know, you want to get things moving, but not heated up, right? And then from there, I go back through and I rotate two different things. One is you're going to make an ointment of marjoram. And after the alcohol is dried, you know, it could be like 30, 45 seconds, a minute. Take the ointment of marjoram, again, 20 to 30 drops per ounce of carrier oil or lotion, and rub it from the knee down to the toes, like, you know, front of the leg, back of the leg, the ankles, the arch of the foot, you know, just rub it all over. And then a little bit later, rotate it with bay laurel. If you don't have bay laurel, arbor vitae or vitae, how did we decide how that's said?
I got them both.
Vitae, arbor vitae. We have a PhD linguistic person in the office now, so that works for us. So I'm going, how do you say arbor vitae or vitae or however you say it? I still can't remember. But the bay laurel actually works better. And so the issue is that, so for one, the arch of the foot is falling and the pain is caused from the inflammation in the fascia. But anytime there is inflammation in the fascia, there's a direct correspondence to the lymph nodes shutting down. So the more inflamed the fascia is, the more that the lymph nodes shut down, which means that that part of your body is not detoxifying and not handling the inflammatory material. So what happens is it keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
Then, like when it starts to feel quite a bit better and you really have calmed it down and it's feeling good, make a liniment of cedar, any type of cedar. Again, probably 20 drops or so, 20, 25 drops per ounce. And then just daily keep putting it on that leg for a period of time. And this is really more for mopping things up and then starting to do some prevention. Another substitute, if you don't have that, could be red pine. An expensive version of it would be sandalwood, but I'd say don't use sandalwood just because of the cost. You know, just cedar's cheap. You know, do the cedar or the red pine. And so the reason to do the cedar is they're very good for circulation, but it's very good for circulation returning to the heart. You know, so you're basically dealing with venous circulation, which is just, you know, return blood flow, not getting blood to the area, but getting it away from the area. if for some reason you're just not clearing it, sometimes there can be blockages in the veins or in some of the junctures at the joints. That's when you would break out the sandalwood. You know, it wouldn't always take a lot of dosages, but the sandalwood is much better for breaking up like blockages within the lymphatic system or within the venous system. But I usually don't lead with that, because usually if you just jumpstart those areas, they kind of function, right?
Okay.
If it's just not responding, that's when you go, okay, I got to break out the big dog and break out the sandalwood. And, you know, usually you treat it for a few days, you know, a week at the most, and then you can go back to the other forms of treatment and you should be fine. But usually the first or second dosage of treating it with the lemongrass, the vetiver, the marjoram, usually within the first dosage of 2, you're noticing significant relief already. Like it will knock it out. I've had several people where they were on the verge of having to have surgery, that the plantar fasciitis was so bad that they actually had, one was a nurse practitioner. She had surgery scheduled like in three days from when I saw her. And apparently it had been there for a few years. And she did this treatment, and she just kept giving me this weird look. And then I thought she was mad at me because it was such a weird look. And I go, did I offend you or something? And, you know, like I was kind of teasing her, and she's like, no. And then she goes, is it possible that the pain went away? And I was like, yeah, it's possible. And she goes, no, I have a dilemma. I have surgery in 2 days or 3 days. And she didn't have the surgery. And I checked in with her like 6 months later. I said, did it come back? And she said, nope, she did. She wasn't even doing the treatment every day. She was doing it like 2 or 3 times a week. And she said, it just knocked it out. And so the other thing is, like when you sleep, you know how like if you sleep, like if this is the foot, like the top of your foot, you don't want to have your foot too like straight. Like if you lay on your stomach and your foot's like pointy, that can aggravate it. So they do make braces that keep the foot kind of like in that flex state. But a lot of times, if you're just aware of it, it doesn't have to be super exaggerated. Just don't point it really excessively. That will actually make quite a difference. If it's still not completely going away, I would actually keep doing all the treatment, but then invest in the brace. You know, if you just pop in plantar fasciitis like brace, you know, I think they're like $25 something on Amazon or something, and you can wear it. But the thing is you'll wear it for like a week or 2, and then you'll probably never use it again.
Let me ask you. I have the fascial release blend. Is that of any use? Because I find
No,
it
so for fascial release is like when the fascia is wound up, and actually here what's happened is because of the inflammation, you've actually lost tone. And so actually what you're having to do is reduce the inflammation, open up the lymph nodes, but you're kind of in a way like firming the fascia up. And so that would be more for like the stiff shoulder or like the tight hamstring, something like that. But for here, you're actually wanting to reduce the inflammation and give that area tone. Because if you look at it, a lot of times there's like veins that are a little bit like they're dilated, you know, they're bigger than normal, and you have a little bit of fluid retention because of poor lymphatic movement. And if you kind of feel the tissue, there's fluid there, but it doesn't quite have the tone, the muscle tone that the other side does. And so you're actually wanting to move all that fluid and then firm the tissue up.
Okay. Sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's horrible. You know, sometimes some mornings I'll get up and it's fine. And then sometimes it feels like really bruised on the bottom of my foot.
Yeah. That's plantar fasciitis. So I have a question for you. Is it your left foot?
Yes.
Do you sit on your foot during meditation?
No.
Okay. Do you do it like doing healings or anything like that?
I'm not aware of.
You know
doing-
how like drawing the left foot up
Yeah,
under the
I'm not-
perineum makes you more conductive?
yeah,
If you do it for long periods of time, you actually cause plantar fasciitis.
yeah, no,
Yeah. I used to sit on my foot all the time doing healings, and my left foot is a size bigger than my right foot.
Huh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Didn't know. You know, but like I'm doing the mechanics, like, you know how he said, like pointing the foot.
Yeah.
I would do that for 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And so like I just, you know, I really wound up or inflamed the fascia there. So over a period of time, I just kept treating it, and you know, the tissue has gotten better, but you know, the arch fell and the foot's bigger.
yeah. My arches have always been really low, and
Yeah.
so now it's like it's
So
amazing.
once all this cleans up, the thing you can go through and you can do the pepper like on the foot itself and the arch. Sometimes it has a firming effect, but do it months after the situation is cleared.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Greg.
You're so welcome. Tell Dave hi.
I will.
Go ahead, Megan, then Kathy.
Hey, Megan.
Hey, I have a question from something in my notes, and
Okay.
also want to vouch for the pronunciation of arborvitae, because in the north
Vitae.
we have a
Yeah.
lot of those trees, and that's how we say it.
Yeah, Vitae. Okay.
So I was looking through my planetary class, and I always wanted to ask you more about this. This is under Mercury, and you said that when the mental body gets really activated and stronger, trauma stops being, this is what I wrote down, trauma stops being trauma, it becomes a puzzle.
Yeah. Boy.
Explain what that means. And I'm trying to activate my mental body a whole lot, but I don't know what that means.
Well, part of what I mean, Mercury is, to me, fascinating. Like I am so fascinated by, like, all the planetary energies are really interesting, but Mercury is really something. And so the interesting thing about Mercury is that part of what Mercury does is it helps the left brain and the right brain to communicate with each other. And so what happens when the left brain and the right brain communicate with each other is that you're able to integrate things to a very high degree. And so a lot of times what happens with trauma is you know, it will get stuck on one side of the brain and not both sides of the brain are processing it. So even the idea of that therapy EMDR, where they move the eyes,
Yeah.
you know, like left to right and everything. And so that is the idea, is you're stimulating both sides of the brain so that you're able to integrate it and just like process it and let it go. And so what happens is when you work with Mercury, you're able to integrate things and kind of go through and process it to a much higher degree. And the traumas like almost shift from being like a traumatic issue, and they kind of turn into something that like, okay, this is something I have to resolve. Like I surround myself with people who are crappy and they hurt me, so gotta start choosing better people, and who do I get rid of? Like, you know, it starts to be like that. Like, you know, you're almost like problem solving what happened and how to like process the pattern. Now, the ability to process all that, which we kind of have been talking about, you know, one-on-one, is the pattern of sexual transmutation, where it's the sex chakra, then the heart, then the throat, then the crown, right? So part of that pattern, the sex chakra is tied to the generation of lower emotion. And when you generate a lot of lower emotion, and it's I don't know the word to use. I want to say weighed down in the lower centers, but it's it's not so much the lower centers. It impacts the basic chakra quite a bit, which would translate as to the arms and the legs. It's really harder to generate higher emotions, which would be tied to transmutation, right? And so as you kind of clean up the sex chakra, what eventually happens is that energy is easily starting to move up to the heart and actually starts to get transmuted. Then what starts to happen is then it starts to move up to the throat, and the throat starts to shift from the instinctive mind, which when you're in lower emotions, part of what happens is you have an instinctual response of how to handle the situation in the here and now, but you really don't see the consequence of any of the actions or like how you got there or like long-term strategy. It's just kind of a reactionary impulse, right? And so by going through and moving it from the sex chakra to the heart and then getting it to the throat, you're at least starting to stimulate critical thinking, and you're starting to stimulate higher creativity. And higher creativity is really those lower emotions and instinctive mind being almost like transmuted so that you are able to start interacting with the environment or the situations, problem solving, and increasing not increasing, probably a better way of saying it is like reflecting the influence of the higher soul. Like the crown is the entry point of divine energy, which we know, but the throat is like a lower reflection of the quality of the crown, right? And so when you're starting to have higher creativity there, it starts to be more of long-term problem solving. You're starting to have more abstract thinking, strategic thinking, rather than just in the here and now. And so it really starts to change the perspective, the perceptions of the mind and the brain, and it really starts to help you to see like more in depth of what's happening, and it starts to change your responses and how you handle the situation. So it in theory starts to reduce the triggers. And so like one of the things like you we were talking about is going through and cleaning those things up. But one of the next phases of that, like after you start to clean up the sex chakra, is you go through and you clean up the arms and the legs. And the arms and the legs are an extension of the basic chakra. And with lower emotions and instinctive thinking, all of that energy, instead of moving up to the heart, it actually kind of stays down in those lower centers, and the sex chakra and the basic, the energy, the kundalini energy gets like stuck, but all those lower emotions and that lower mental, like instinctive mental reactions actually start to diffuse into the arms and the legs. And so what happens is the arms and the legs are full of these kind of thought forms that they're not generated by the psyche. You know, they influence the psyche, but they're not generated by the psyche. And so as you go through and you clean all these up, it allows for the higher emotions and your mental body to become more activated. And so it changes it from an automatic behavior or a response, which means that your brain and your mind's not processing it, your body just reacts. You know, so lower emotions and instinctive responses are just responses. You know, and then later you try to make sense out of it, right? What happened? What does this mean, right? By going through and cleaning these things up, you're able to process it to a much higher degree and start to form long-term strategies where it literally like starts to turn it into like a puzzle. Like it stops being like, oh, this is good or this is bad or this is what this means or this is what that means. It just goes like, okay, I need to break out of this pattern, or I need to refine myself in this pattern. I need to grow out of this pattern. I need to evolve out of this pattern. You know, you kind of start looking at it from that point of view, and it changes that drive of trying to seek comfort, and you just go, okay, what do I got to do to be done with this? What do I got to do to make this different? What do I got to do? What do I got to let go of to make this change? And you just really start kind of problem solving it. And it's not even like you think, oh, this is good or this is bad. It's just like, this is what's got to happen.
So like, as I worry about all the people in the world with trauma that may or may not be getting professional help, I mean, can the average person just like grow, evolve, develop their mind and have, you know, like some automatic healing or shedding going on of like things like that? Or
what happens when the sex chakra isn't cleaned up enough, and the basic, which when I say the basic, I'm also meaning the arms and the legs, the tendency is to get entangled. Like, you know, we all do it to a certain degree, but people that haven't had any meditation or haven't cleaned those areas up, they get it very entangled with situations that don't allow for them to process things properly. And so sometimes they get close to it when they get older or when they get close to passing. And sometimes they just never get there. I mean, it depends on the individual.
yeah.
Meditation, contemplation, reflection, all those are helpful, but you know, mechanically, if those areas don't get cleaned up, potentially that's always an issue. Now, kind of based in your biology has like some mechanisms to kind of do this naturally, is like as you get older, those two centers kind of weaken over a period of time. And so that's why you'll see people who might be angry all those years, and then maybe their last 5 or 10 years, they're doing a little bit better, they're a little bit happier, they're a little bit nicer. It's because those inner centers don't quite have the energy. They're not necessarily spiritually growing and evolving, but they're just not as entangled anymore. And so, you know, that technique where we do the instructions that were given by Moses, which is activate the heart, then the navel, then the crown. You know, so it's basically a modified version of like Twin Hearts or the Lotus meditation in Astara. That actually has an impact, and it's stronger when you do it with the navel. Like if you don't do it with the navel, you know, part of the thing with the navel is it's the center that's in charge of the lower centers. You know, it regulates the lower centers in conjunction with the ajna, right? The ajna regulates all the centers. The navel regulates the navel, the spleen, the mingmen, the sex, and the basic, right? And so part of what happens there is until the lower centers are more regulated, you're generating large amounts of lower emotions all the time. So part of what happens is like when you're doing meditation, you're storing energy in the navel. Part of what you're trying to do is you're trying to regulate that center so that your upper centers can actually activate. And so when you go through and you clean up the sex, the heart, the throat, and the crown, like that pathway, and you clean up the arms and the legs, like kind of the next wave is you go and you do very specific purifications on the navel and navel minor, and it just starts to grow by leaps and bounds. All of these things contribute to the energy of Mercury. Like, you know, they kind of go hand in hand. Anytime you look at a planetary energy, they all have different properties to them. But like you could say, if you had to boil down what they impact the most, they impact the physical form, but they impact the physical form, meaning the basic chakra. And again, meaning also the arms and legs, but they increase the state of oneness that one can experience in the form. Like oneness is expansion within the form, where like twin hearts, you're expanding your consciousness outside the body. In meditation on the soul or meditation on the blue pearl, you're expanding consciousness and awareness within the form, within the body, right? And so that is somewhat tied to the integration or the harnessing of planetary energies.
Okay. Thank you.
So like you're like anytime you change the basic, you're kind of changing your brain as well. And so like when you start working with the planetary energies, you are changing like the flexibility of the basic chakras, is the best way to say it. Even though like the, you know, one planet is associated with this chakra, one planet is associated with that chakra. That is completely true on one level. And then on another level, you could say all the planets are associated with the basic chakra. Like all the vital centers are associated with the basic chakra. All the blood centers are associated with the basic chakra. All the alchemical processes associated with the zodiac are associated with the basic chakra. You start looking at the brain waves, that would, if you boiled it down, would be more of a solar plexus thing. You know, they do a whole bunch of things, but if you boil it down, you can always take it back to the solar plexus. Where you're dealing with angels, it's access to the inner world. You're bringing in like a physicalization of divine energy into the form, or the word being made flesh. So all the angels would be associated actually with the forehead chakra. They have chakras that they have an affinity for, but when you're really doing deep work, there are certain steps that you do where it's just about doing a couple of things and then the forehead chakra. You know, so each thing has its thing. Like you look at deity yoga, that is, you could associate different deities to different chakras, but then you focus on one particular part of the energetic anatomy and the physiology to produce an even deeper result. So a lot of times what you do is you go through and you unwind the physiology so you don't cause like a healing crisis. But when you get into the deeper, more esoteric work, it's not more complicated. It's actually less complicated. It's just stronger because you've unwound everything to get there. Like if you don't unwind it, it's just like sticking a stick of dynamite in the ground. It blows everything up and it's not always stable. But if you unwind it and then go in and do that, it's very stable. It happens very quick, and it like latches on to the form.
Oh.
Like in esoteric teachings, they would say the Holy Spirit has descended and stayed, you know, where like before you would say like the I am affirmation, for example. And when you say the I am affirmation, the spiritual cord would get bigger, right? And then you say something where you identify with the body, like I'm hungry or something, the spiritual cord would shrink. When the Holy Spirit has descended and stayed, it doesn't matter which one you say, the spiritual cord actually stops shrinking.
Wow.
And if you even start to say something like where you identify with the body, it turns in from I am that I am to where it starts to flip it, where the higher soul starts to go, I am that I am. So when you start identifying with the body, the emotions, or the mind, it actually increases the soul contact because you're bringing in soul energy down.
Wow.
But that happens naturally. That's, I mean, it can be stimulated, but it's a lot of purification to do that. But sometimes people assume that that's there, like no need to like stimulate that. It's just a natural progression. Once the body's been cleaned up enough, it just happens naturally. It just basically means that the higher soul has physicalized into the form. You know, it's literally the word being made flesh.
Yeah. Wow.
So part of that thing that we were talking about, like going through and treating, you're unwinding some of that.
Yeah.
You know? It's best to do it in steps. Otherwise, speaking from personal experience, you can throw yourself in a little bit of a crisis. Like do it in a way that's stable. No need to be in a crisis. It's not faster. It's just more comfortable.
Is this more work and trouble? Thank you.
You're so.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Hey,
Hi.
Miss Kat.
Hi. I have a friend who said she'll start doing massages, and I got a massage table, but I have never mixed liniments or massage oils. I tend to shy away from it because I haven't done it before.
Right.
So what would be just a good massage oil? I mean, I have so many favorite oils, but just,
Okay. So first off, in the front of any of the booklets, there is like a description of like what an ointment is, what a massage oil is, what any variation of that. There's like some instructions on how to do
Okay.
it. It not necessarily tells you which oils to use, but it's still like
How
if
to
you
mix
needed to make a liniment or an ointment versus a massage oil, it will tell you how to do each one of those.
Okay.
But for a good massage oil, kind of depends a little bit on what you're shooting for, but I'll tell you some of my favorites. Marjoram is always good. One that you wouldn't think of, but it's really nice is cedar. Like cedar, you can even mix it with a little rosemary and cedar, but I like to do just plain old cedar. It's a good circulatory tonic, but it moves everything to the back to the heart, and it has a little bit of a diuretic effect, so it helps you to detoxify and release things from the lymphatic system through urination. Really nice. Vetiver is always amazing. I think that was my very first oil that I was just like, man, I was just blown away by. And I used to
I love that oil. I love the fragrance of
I
it.
used to get all my massages with vetiver. And so vetiver, spikenard, they're very good for muscle imbalances and things like that. Any of the peppers, pink pepper, black pepper, white pepper, very good antispasmodic, very good circulatory stimulant. Can have a little bit of a diuretic effect, not too overpowering, but very good for circulation, strengthening the body, loosening up fascia, helping to loosen up muscles and tendons.
These are the peppers.
Yeah, the different peppers. Okay. Yeah. Even basil can be quite nice. Basil, let me look that up real quick. Basil is good for breaking up, like you would call it like the energy of thought. It's not necessarily a thought form, but just like negative thinking or stress thinking or thoughts from other people, things you absorb from the environment. It helps to break up the effects of like trauma and fear on the body. Like basil is really good for that. Hyssop's really good for that. And Sitka is really super good for that. Mugwort is really good for opening up the channels. Think of it like getting an acupuncture massage. It just, wherever you put it, it opens up the channels, makes energy flow. And so that's good. Another one that's really good is charcoal root cleanser. Like it's cleansing, it helps to release things from deep within, it's a lymphatic stimulant, it brings things from the unconscious to the conscious, it helps you let go of just old old thought patterns, things like that, can be quite nice. And
I
so,
took that in a salt bath and I really liked it.
yeah,
Chakra
oh my
cleanser.
God, it feels so good. Yeah, feels so good. I even like to do hyssop or Solomon's hyssop in massage. Very cleansing to the body and to the joints. And so, I mean, any of those are good choices depending on what you're shooting for.
I need a lot of massages to use all those.
Yeah.
Actually, it was funny. Another question I had was, you've mentioned a couple times putting mugwort on the joints, but I don't remember exactly why. And something about mugwort. I like that oil. So
Okay, so a couple of things. So you can do on the joints themselves, right? Or you can also do the palm, and like, the point, like that tender point, like right, a couple of fingers down, like on
I feel it,
the
yeah.
outside of the forearm, and then the same like between excuse me, I said the palm. I meant the web, like the
Okay.
web between the thumb and the finger, and then the same on the foot, in between the thumb and the finger. And then if you go up to the tibia, the bone in your lower leg, and about 3 fingers down, you can kind of poke around on your shin and you find that little sore spot. Put mugwort right there. That opens up the whole body and really is very, it nourishes the internal organs, especially the stomach. So
can you repeat the
part of-
points again, just so I
yeah,
get them all?
so the web,
Okay.
and then that point on the outer part of the
Elbow,
forearm,
okay.
and then the thumb web, or excuse me, the web between the first and second toe on the foot on top.
Oh,
and
first and
then-
second toe. Okay.
Mhm. And then I'm trying to see if I have something like it, but basically the shin, about 3 fingers down from the tibia. Like if you poke around
Isn't
there,
the
you'll find
shin your leg?
your lower leg.
But you said the tibia. I'm
The
not.
tibia is the big bone in your lower leg.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you go about 3 fingers down and then start poking around the shin area, you'll find kind of a tender spot. Put the mugwort on that, right?
3
And
fingers
so-
down from the knee or from?
From the, like where the bone is. Like, I'm trying to see if I can pull this over. I don't know if. Can you grab that one? Will it come off the sand? Give us just a second. We have props.
Oh, no, it's lovely.
Yeah. Okay. So. Okay. So can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, yes. You can see
Okay,
the knee.
So this is the leg. This is where the knee would be. So your tibia, you see how like this is like where the kneecap would be. So the tibia, like right here, like if you go like 3 fingers down from here and start poking on the shin down in this area, you'll find a sore spot. Like
Okay, so it's on the outside of the leg.
Yeah,
Just
the
below
outside.
okay.
Yeah, the outside.
And those are that's all of them?
Yeah, so you hit those 4 spots. And so what
Okay.
that does is what that does is it opens up the arms and the legs so that energy flows, and you kind of start releasing the lower emotions, the lower thoughts and things that more associated with the instinctive mind. They get stuck in the basic and the arms and the legs, and it reduces the tendency to get triggered.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes a while. It doesn't happen real super quick, but it will happen over a period of time. It's faster if you clean up the sex chakra quite a bit.
Uh-huh. And is that neat? You don't have to mix it with anything to put the mugwort on those places.
You can do it neat, but I would actually add a little bit of some sort of carrier oil.
Okay.
Just because it will make the oil linger there longer. Like you'll get a
Okay.
bigger energetic impact, which you're trying to do. You'll get a better impact if it's got a little bit of carrier oil. Like the roller balls that we do, we use jojoba. Like you don't have to use jojoba, but I just use jojoba because it extends the scent and it never goes rancid or bad. So like those roller balls will last, for a really super long time, because even if you left it in the sun, it's not going to go rancid. Where massage oil, you leave it in the sun, it goes rancid.
Okay. So would that be, that oil be the one I use for the massage oil as well, you think?
You could. Yeah, you definitely could. I mean, I haven't done mugwort massage in a while, but I like me a mugwort bath. It does.
Well,
open
no,
up
for
all
the,
the
when I mentioned massage oil and you had a lot of variety of oils, what carrier oil do you most recommend?
Usually I would use either sesame or almond.
Okay.
Yeah. Almond has a really nice texture. It's really nice for the skin.
Okay.
Yeah. Sesame is a very good lymphatic stimulant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my knees, they aren't in pain, but sometimes when I exercise, they're feeling a little stiff and they crack a little bit. Is there anything particularly that I should put on my knees that might help?
So that joint relief blend, or like a combination of rosemary.
I have joint relief blend, so.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, just mix that in some massage oil and rub it on your knees.
Okay.
Yeah, like make it strong. Like put like 10, 12 drops of the joint relief, and then like a little bit of massage oil, and go like this, and then just rub it all over one knee, and then 10, 12 drops massage oil, and then do the other knee.
Oh, okay. So just in my hand, I make it easy.
Yeah, just mix it in your hand. Yeah.
My last question is, I mentioned several weeks back or whatever about a flower when I went to India, and you were going to ask your friend if he returns from Nepal, if he might.
Yeah, he hasn't
know
gotten back yet.
Okay,
Yeah.
just thought I'd check.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Someone asks, my mom struggles with balance and has discomfort in her right knee. She broke her hip about 10 years ago. Now her knee on that side is dramatically bent inward and really bothers her. Are there
Like it moves to the midline.
Yes.
Okay. That's going to be a tough one. Has she had any sort of physical therapy or anything like that?
Yeah, she did physical therapy for a while after she broke her hip.
What about for the knee? What about for the knee?
I don't know if she's done it for the knee specifically or not.
Okay. I right off the bat, I would probably, the best thing you could do is start to increase circulation in that knee joint. And so either joint relief or the combination of the pepper, that would be your best bet. Both are going to increase blood supply to the joint, but the issue here is not so much the joint itself, is you're really looking at the tendons. Something is probably lost a significant amount of muscle tone, where that knee is shifted like that. And so you want to try to unwind the fascia and unwind the tendons and such to try to balance that leg out a little bit. Yeah, I would treat also up into the upper thigh, like, the front and back side, especially the boy, you're going to have to treat it on the inside of the leg and the outside. You could do that for maybe a few weeks and then start rotating it with either spikenard or vetiver, valerian, something like that, just to start to try to correct some of the muscle imbalances. But usually when you have the concern is that usually when you start to have the leg move in or out either direction is the cartilage in the bone. It starts to grind on the cartilage in the bone. And so sometimes you're fighting the degeneration of that joint as much as you're dealing with the tissue. You're also dealing with how the joint has worn down. And so sometimes it becomes harder. You can stop it from getting worse, but sometimes it's hard to get it to go back. And so it depends.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I just wanted to try and help her.
Yeah,
Get it.
and bottom line, keep her comfortable. Like, you know, the things
Yeah.
that we're talking about will definitely keep her comfortable, but slowing the rate of that joint getting worse is big push. Like if you can do that, you know, prevent it from being surgical.
Exactly. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Is there anything you can do to reverse / prevent cataracts?
Usually big dosages of vitamin C, which would be quercetin, over a period of time. You know, a lot of times a cataract issue, the tissue lacks vitamin C. So the eye tissue and the collagen, everything starts breaking down. So increase vitamin C levels quite substantially, but it's a very long-term approach. Yeah.
Vitamin C or quercetin?
No, I
just
would do
quercetin?
quercetin's going to last them It's going to last in the body longer. And so that is the better approach. Like if you just take pure vitamin C, it probably will only stay in the body for 3 or 4 hours, where the quercetin will stay in the body a lot longer because it's more of a crude form of vitamin C. It takes the body longer to process it, so it stays in the body longer. And so if you're trying to stabilize collagen over a period of time, bigger dosages of quercetin. You can just take collagen, you know, like we use what's it called, Neocell, which is type 1 and type 3 collagen, and you know, you just take a little bit every day, and yeah, it makes the hair and nails stronger, less brittle, things like that. But you gotta do it like every day, and it's a long-term treatment.
Any suggestions for swelling around carpal tunnel?
Swelling, yeah. Is there still a lot of repetition or use, or was there an injury to the wrist?
Tajal? Wrist. Yeah. Will you repeat your question?
Was there an injury to the wrist, or was there still a lot of repetitive movement with the wrist?
No.
No. And how long has it been there?
10 days.
Okay. If it's only been there 10 days, like what are you calling carpal tunnel? Like show where it's hurting.
It's in my left-hand side, wrist. And
But where in the wrist? Like where in the wrist?
that two small bone around the wrist.
She's not showing the picture.
Like, can you show your picture?
Yeah, 1 second. 1 second.
Sure.
Good wait.
Okay. Hey.
Hey. Around here.
You just be
And there is
quiet.
a swelling little bit over here.
It's on the outside like that?
Yeah, outside and
Okay.
this particular bone area.
Can you go like this? See how I'm like, my hands are like this, but I go like this?
Yeah,
And that doesn't cause you any pain?
no.
That's not carpal tunnel. It's still a wrist issue, but it's not carpal tunnel. And
I
so the thing with that is most likely, like you see how okay, you see this is like the outer part of my forearm, right? And
Mhm.
so, and then this is the inner part of my forearm. Go all the way to the outside here, where it's like
Mhm.
almost like on the side. And if you start like if you start poking your way down, you'll notice about halfway up the forearm, it starts getting really tender, right? You feel that?
Yeah.
And
But
so the
this,
higher you get, it starts to be a little bit tighter and a little bit more tender. So you want to put like marjoram or ginger, black pepper, any of the peppers, even rosemary would work. But I do marjoram, ginger, or the peppers, and just rub it on that part of the arm right there. And part of what happens is when this gets tight, it actually throws off how your wrist tracks. And so you'll have like kind of deep wrist pain. But if you can do this, the median nerve is not being impacted. So you basically are having issues with how the bones, you have a bunch of little bones in here, how this joint like tracks. And part of it is actually that inner part of the forearm there. So take some of the oil and with a little bit of lotion or massage oil and just really keep rubbing that part. If you do that a few days in a row, it should reduce it, but you're going to have to really kind of dig in there with the oil as well. Like get in and use your thumb or your two fingers and
okay.
really kind of keep doing some friction on those spots. Look for the sore spots and really kind of get around and poke around a little bit. You can always take your thumb and find like a sore spot and then just hold it for like 10-15 seconds and just kind of move your thumb around, but not slipping on the skin. Like you see, like if I take my thumb, I'm pushing, but I'm not slipping on the skin, but I'm moving everything around. You kind of do that, you'll knock it out really quick, especially since it's so acute, like it's only been there 10 days. That is still in the acute phase. So that means you could probably knock it out kind of quickly. If it was there for a few years, you could still knock it out, but it would just take a lot more treatment.
Okay, no, it's just paining, especially around this area.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes in the middle of night, it pains more over this area.
Yeah. Well, it will ache in the joint, and sometimes the joint will almost start to feel like it gets locked. It's because it doesn't allow the joint to move properly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I do that. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Keep us posted, okay, Dejal?
Yeah, definitely.
Someone is trying to move away from taking Ambien sleeping pill. They've been on it for a couple decades, I think.
Oh, it's going to take a while.
Are there any oils and or pH recommendations? She's trying to wean herself using CBD for sleep right now.
Okay. So one of the byproducts sometimes with Ambien is, are you having anxiety or panic attacks? Like sometimes that's a byproduct of the medication.
I don't know. It's for a client.
Oh, okay. I mean, you can start with like spikenard and vetiver just as a general way to try to relax the body. Tarragon is always soothing. Spanish sage could also work for calming down the nerves, but that long of use of Ambien, I would say it probably needs a bit stronger approach. Probably what I would do is have them take 2 to 3, maybe even 4 drops. Maybe start with 2 to 3 drops of Schizandra, of the oil Schizandra, in a little bit of water and drink it, and then inhale. I'm gonna reach and say, inhale hyssop, like while laying in bed. You could either do hyssop or marjoram. Hyssop is going to calm down the muscles of the body, and when I say muscles, it's more the muscles of the digestive tract and the respiratory tract rather than your skeletal muscles. Or marjoram, which helps to pull the person out of fight, flight, and tone the vagus nerve, which the vagus nerve is tied to parasympathetic activity, and the rest and repair mode is parasympathetic. So it's not going to be an overnight treatment. I'm just telling you right now, like that long of use. I would also have them check. They might even have to taper off of that. That long of use, the body has gotten very used to having that, and so there's going to be an uncomfortable period, usually for a little bit before it feels better. The thing that I would also look at is that if there's any anxiety or panic attacks, which definitely can be a byproduct of long-term Ambien use. The other thing with Ambien, there is the tendency for things like sleepwalking, but basically part of how Ambien works is it's a little bit of a dissociative. It makes the person like check out a little bit. So they'll get up and they'll do things, but they won't remember. Part of that sleepwalking mechanism and part of checking out is it causes some dissociation. So some of the old school pain meds did that, like ketamine and things like that. But the Ambien doesn't have the pain relieving properties, but it has the dissociative properties. And so part of the issue why it causes the anxiety and the panic attacks is the arms and legs are super, super congested. And so you can clean those up by also using hyssop on the joints or mugwort. You could actually even use like hyssop salt scrubs or like mix hyssop and salt and have her or whoever it is scrub their arms and their legs and especially their feet. And that will greatly reduce it as well.
Go ahead, Shannon.
Hey, Shannon.
Happy New Year, guys.
Hey, how's life out in your world?
Oh, wonderful. So I have got a really close friend and coworker who has a son with Molluscum Contagiosum, and it's like a viral kind of wart virus that young kids get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where's it
And
at?
well, usually I'm not very concerned. I tell the parents to calm down. It'll go away on its own. He's got them everywhere now, and they're starting to get on his face, like thousands of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so much so that his dad took him to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician said, I'm going to have to refer to derm. And mom's like, well, I work in derm and he's already seen derm. I've tried everything aside from liquid nitrogen, which is so traumatic, and I don't like doing.
Yeah.
I've put him on cimetidine, which studies have shown, in younger children can help. But I'm just wondering if there's anything topically that we can use that's not so irritating, like some of the.
How old is the child?
He's 9 years old, so it's becoming very emotionally impactful.
Like that age, you can kind of start treating them like an adult, as far as dosages and things. Like if it was a couple of years younger, you're kind of a little bit limited in the things you can use. But at like 9, 10, it's not quite the same dosage, but you can use adult oils,
Yeah.
And so things that can be antiviral for that, like warts, like all over their body like this, I've actually never treated that. Like I've treated like when people have like breakouts, but not to that extent. The thing that actually works kind of well is that arbor vitae or arbor, how do we say it? Arbor vitae? Yeah, arbor vitae. You could probably put it in like a lotion and then cover the body. I probably wouldn't put it on the face though. I think the idea, if you rubbed it on the body, is you would be like treating it more systemically rather than spot treatments. A lot of times you can put the arbor, how do we say it again? Vitae? Yeah, or the arbor vitae or vitae, however you say it. You would put it like neat, like directly on the spot. But when you start to have so many, I would treat it more like systemically rather than the spot treatments, and just try to calm that down. Tea tree could kind of work, usually doesn't work as fast. And the other one that would work would be lemon, but I hesitate in applying that to the skin because if he was out in the sun, it would, have the reaction and his skin would change color. So I would say probably not that. I'd probably stay in the realm of the arbor vitae or the tea tree.
Okay, and with systemic, he's a big boy. Dad's 6'4", and he's probably into 90 to 100 pounds, tall boy. How would I have them do systemic treatment for that?
So he's about 90 to 100 pounds. I mean, I would treat him like a little adult. So, I mean, I would probably, there's no other health issues that we're aware of?
No, not that we're aware of.
I would probably do about 12 to 15 drops per ounce. Like maybe start with 10 drops per ounce of the carrier, like the massage oil or the lotion. And then maybe slowly over a period of time, work up to 15 to 16 drops maybe. And then just rub it on big portions of the body, even if it's just the back and the torso for a little bit. But if the arms or legs are hit a little bit harder, then I would hit those spots as well.
His trunk is actually the most concentrated.
Okay,
and
then hit the trunk.
Okay, yeah. And where he's scratched, they're just like in these solid linear formations all over.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have another carrier or oil you would recommend on that?
Nothing's really jumping out. I would probably just keep it in the vein of like, you could probably get away with sesame, but if you could get your hands on macadamia nut oil,
Okay.
sometimes health food stores will have that. You could use that, but if not, just whatever you can get your hands on.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate
You're so
it.
welcome. Yeah, I'm super curious. Keep me posted how that progresses.
I definitely will. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Go ahead, Sonia.
Hey, Sonia.
You're still muted.
There, is it now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to say that lead toxicity can cause those warts all over your body. And
that makes sense. Yeah.
Liposomal vitamin C does last longer than regular vitamin C, but if you're doing heavy metal detox, it protects the kidneys and it will help remove heavy metals except for thallium metal, although it'll protect your kidneys from the thallium. There's a nanoparticle for heavy metals. There's a nanoparticle, what is it? There's a material that will remove the heavy metals, and it's best if it's the nanoparticles because it has more more surface to grab the heavy metals. It's a zeolite. It's a nanoparticle.
Oh, yeah.
So, but you should get a professional to guide you, because if heavy metals exit too fast, they can be damaging. You don't want to overload the system, and you need to keep track of kidney and heart and how your organs are functioning.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense with the lead though. You know, like in the old days, different solvents, like when guys worked with like cleaning auto parts and things like that, they're super prone to warts and things. And a lot of times it's from the solvents. So that would make sense. They have a lot of lead.
That nanoparticle zeolite will pull out solvents as well.
Nice.
And we have just one more question here. I'm curious about the golden flame class. I read the description of the benefits, but what is the golden flame itself? Is it a Shakti pot, like a Shakti pot?
It's when your reaction to pain, the physical body is like, so the responses are calmed down. When the physical body is calm and still, the emotional body calm and still, the mental body calm and still, and then starting to stimulate a downpouring of spiritual energy. As all of that happens, the Kundalini energy keeps moving up, and eventually it produces a flame etherically on the top of the head. So you see like how the Pope wears the big hat, and like the Dalai Lama has that like weird yellow kind of curly hat. That all symbolize the golden flame. Even the wizard hat is actually symbolizing the golden flame. And so it's the movement of Kundalini through the centers and rising up on top of the head, producing the golden flame. And so it's expansion of consciousness, allowing for the downpouring of divine energy coming down, but you're basically going through and training the different bodies, you know, the physical body, emotional body, mental body, to be able to allow the energy to move up and then produce the golden flame. So with everything that we did through all the chakras, this is kind of the, you know, we basically did a year-long Kundalini meditation or Lord's Prayer, and this would be the byproduct of taking all that and then moving the energy up for, I don't want to say the final movement, but a next step in the progression through those centers.
Do I need
Good-
to have
good
taken
for-
that class?
No, good for psychological healing, good for some physical healing. Sometimes when people have really severe like anger issues and things, I have them do small portions of the class, you know, like a segment or two. So each of the segments will stand on their own and can be used therapeutically, but when they're stacked together, it produces deep meditation through calming. Like stillness means like that it's calm, but there's greater activity at the same time in the physical body, emotional body, mental body, and so on, causal body.
Okay, go ahead, Tejal.
Yeah, we just have about a minute to draw, so.
Hey, Greg. See, this
Oh,
is-
that's beautiful.
can you see-
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's very heavy and powerful. Like,
Yeah,
can
yeah.
you stand the energy? It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's very nice. Very, very
But-
pretty.
But the person who has given me gift, he don't know whether how old he is or whether someone has used it or not. But is that something you can scan the energy and tell me?
It's hard because sometimes they're a little congested. So maybe clean it up a little bit and we'll try looking at it next time. Like sweep it a whole bunch or chant Om over it for a long period of time.
Okay. And then how about Om Rama? Oh,
What's that?
Om Rama. Om.
Just do Om for a while.
okay. I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, you're so welcome. Okay, so we're going to cut out and do leave this study group, and then we're stepping into the next study group for the angels. So love you guys, and thanks for joining us, and hopefully see you next week.